Hey, everybody, it is Trags Mike Petralia back with the latest installment of the Code Reds podcast here on the CLNS Media Network. My pleasure to welcome the Cowboy, Jeff Brantley, back to the podcast after, say, about a year away. I haven't had you on in about a year, Cowboy, but obviously Jeff Brantley does great work on the Reds television network, on FanDuel Sports Network, as well as, of course, the home of the Reds on radio, 700 WLW, the big one. Cowboy, when can Reds fans expect this team to really hit its stride based on what you've seen so far this year?
Well, I think number one, you can't hit your stride without all of your players, and Tyler Stevenson is still not back in the lineup. I think you're seeing spurts of what this club can be. We've seen some pitching excellence, especially early in the season. We saw the bats really come to life, not only in the Mariners series that they lost, but especially in the Baltimore Orioles series. And I think you're going to see times where you're going to run into some pitchers on good nights where things don't quite go well. And that was really the scenario in the first ball game in Miami. Young kid Max Meyer struck out 14. Looked like a young Corbin Burns to me for a while there.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think has bothered the Reds, and the Reds have struggled with over the last couple of years, are strikeouts, and obviously it's been well documented with Ellie De La Cruz trying to cut down on his strikeouts. Do you see him making progress in that regard this year?
I do. I see him making progress all the way around. You can see some different techniques that he's using in fielding ground balls at shortstop. Even though he's made a couple of errors, I think he's coming in the right direction. And I think for any young player, as long as you're improving, you're getting better and getting to the place that you need to go. Especially a guy with as high a talent as Ellie. I think from the right side of the plate, he's probably made his most improvement. I still believe that he thinks that he can hit the ball any pitch out of the ballpark, and maybe he can. We don't really know whether he
I
can
don't
or
think
not.
that's a bad thing, though. I like
Yeah.
it if he thinks that on any pitch. I kind of like that because he still has his confidence. Do you think he knows how good he is? And I know that may sound silly given how many sensational plays he makes, but sometimes with a young player, Cowboy, you know this. When you're young, you still don't know what you don't know, right? We hear that all the
Right.
time. Does
I
Ellie
think
know how good he can be?
I I think he's told that a lot, but I think internally that's a tough mechanism to process on a daily basis. I think you as a player you have an awful lot of fun playing the game, and I think that's when the game comes easy and it comes fast, and you're always looking forward to the next pitch or the next ground ball or the next ball hit your way. I think that's the anticipation kind of drives you. So you never really feel like you're down. And I think that's kind of where Ellie is. I don't know that he can see the high mountain that everybody expects him to get to. And I think in one sense that's probably a good thing. In another sense, it's what holds you back as a young player because you don't really realize how great you actually could be and how really easy you can make this game.
Do you think he hears, and I don't know if you've ever had a chance to ask him this, but do you think he hears the talk about being baseball's first billion-dollar player? Because when I hear that number and it's a young kid like Ellie, that can have a massive impact, I would think.
Yeah, I think when you start talking about things that are outside the physical realm of what we do as baseball players, I think that's too much noise. I think that adds an unnecessary amount of pressure because that's not really something that you can control. What you can control is how you swing, how you run, how you catch the ball. You can control your athletic ability. You can't really control the market. You can't control how the negotiations go. And in a real sense, Trags, you really can't control where you're going to be playing in 3 or 4 years from now, whether it be in Cincinnati, might be the New York Yankees, might be the Los Angeles Dodgers. We don't really know what the financial semantics will be at that point in time. So I think it's unnecessary for him to kind of look down the road. You pay agents and you pay representatives to do all that mess.
So somebody, and I'm glad you brought that up, somebody who I think has done a remarkable job with that is Hunter Green. He came up with great expectations, and I think in the last couple of years, last year and this so far this year, his maturity is skyrocketed. And I think if the Reds fans are looking for one thing to really cling on to in terms of what he could bring to the Reds in their pitching rotation, that would be it to me. His maturity and how he handles the silliness, the ludicrous garbage going on right now with his glove. And I want to ask your opinion on, first of all, what do you know about the situation regarding his glove and how he's handled it? And thirdly, Terry Francona's answer, I think after the game on Saturday, was about as disgusted as I have ever heard him when he's talking about someone in the administrative levels of Major League Baseball. There's a lot there to unpack, I know, Cowboy. But
Yeah, I agree with Tito in this area. I think that it's unnecessary. Um, I, I think that something has happened along the line, and this is how this works with the umpires. Somebody has made a statement behind the scenes in the upper levels of Major League Baseball that Hunter has decided to put a brand or a logo of his own on his glove, some type of number 21 or whatever that logo entails, and they didn't like it. And so what they're doing is, without putting their name on it and without saying this is a rule, or without saying this is what we're going to do moving forward from this point, they've
right.
decided that they're going to cause and affect an issue with Hunter Green solely based on their dislike for what he has on the glove. Because I can tell you right now, there's not a hitter in baseball that can see that glove, and it doesn't affect anything that's going on with the batter and pitcher relationship. I think it's ridiculous.
Well, then simply tell him we don't want a personal brand that doesn't line up with our marketing guidelines and our laws, or what or regulations. That's the word I'm looking for. It doesn't line up with our marketing regulations at the Major League Baseball level. Be done with it. To me, it's not that complicated, and it just seems like they're going through this rigmarole and trying to mess with his. I'm sure they're not trying to mess with his head. I don't think, but they still are trying, or they're disrupting what he's doing early on in ball games.
Yeah, I think for any player, whether you're a pitcher or a fielder, I mean, could you imagine if this was going on with Ellie? Can you
Oh,
imagine being a shortstop and you were told, okay, you can't use the glove that you use every single day. You have to change that out, and we're going to hand you this brick for a glove that's not broken in, and you got to go play shortstop at the major league level. That would be a disaster. It would be a bigger headline than just having a pitcher change his glove, because unfortunately, everyone that looks at this game just thinks, well, the pitcher doesn't use their glove. It feels the same. It's part of your body. It's part of your uniqueness when you're out there, and it's kind of a home feeling when you have your glove and you're on the mound. I mean, pitchers are just like everybody else. I think that this whole thing is totally ridiculous of what Major League Baseball is doing with Hunter Green's glove.
and it certainly is ridiculous. It's unnecessary. It could be solved in a matter of a 5-minute discussion. Here's why we have an issue with it, and just move on. And I'm sure Hunter would be like, he may agree, disagree, but he'd be like, okay, I appreciate you laying it out for me. We'll move on and be done with it. But it just doesn't seem like it's going that way. Okay. On Saturday, and Hunter Green struggled in Baltimore. Obviously, he only got through 3 innings, and I believe it was 75 pitches, something like that. He clearly didn't have his best stuff. And, the term dead arm comes up. Can you have a dead arm this early in the season? And if you do, you can still throw 100 miles an hour like he did in the first inning when he hit a couple of batters?
Well, I think Hunter, and I think he's already shown this in his short major league career. Even when he is at his maximum fatigue level, he can still throw the ball 100 miles an hour. Now, control becomes the issue in his fatigue scenario. And I think that's what we saw. So yes, to answer your question, yes, you could still have a dead arm and your arm feel terrible and still be able to throw 100 miles an hour. That's the talent that
That's
100 Green
incredible to me, but
possesses. It is incredible. The thing that you have to look at is early in the season when you have a major stretch out performance, i.e., the pitching in San Francisco when he pitched into the ninth inning. You could tell at the end of that ball game he had reached his maximum level as far as whatever he was going to be able to put out on the field, not only from a physical standpoint, but from a mental standpoint. After that ball game, he was just flat worn out. You come back 5 days later, you pitch against the Pittsburgh Pirates. The last two innings that he pitched, the sixth and the seventh, were not the same Hunter Green that we've seen early in the season. He was tired, but he was facing a down club, and the Pirates, they weren't going to hit him anyway, as long as he got the ball over the plate. Where this thing really showed up was in Baltimore, and it wasn't one start, it was two starts before that, before we actually realized, okay, that start in San Francisco really took it out of him, and it showed up in Baltimore.
Want to move on to Andrew Abbott, speaking with Cowboy, Jeff Brantley of the Reds Radio Network and the Reds Television Network as well. Does great work breaking all things down for the Cincinnati Reds. I want to talk about Andrew Abbott. And when I watch him pitch, there's many times it crosses my mind, and I'm sure it crosses yours, how in control he is and how fluid he is and how he doesn't seem, and I go back to Tom Browning when I watch him. I've always thought of Tom Browning when I watch Andrew Abbott. He doesn't blow you away, but he gets batters out. Is that the most impressive thing about Andrew Abbott?
Yeah, I think when you're watching Andrew, the big key for me is that he's throwing a lot of times 91, 92, and batters are late or they don't pick the ball up at all. So what that tells me is it's not just the physical velocity of the baseball. It's also where you deliver it from and how much you hide the baseball before the ball ever comes out of your hand. And if you watch Andrew, you would think to yourself, boy, his mechanics are really simple. He just picks the knee up and throws the ball to the plate. Doesn't look like he's doing a whole lot of things different. Well, what that tells me is he's nice and smooth and he's comfortable in his delivery. When you actually look at it from a hitter's perspective, he's got his back turned. He throws across his body. The ball stays behind his body and behind his hat right until release point. So the ball actually explodes onto the hitter. That's why they don't pick it up. That's why they swing at pitches that are way out of the strike zone. That's why they're having a difficult time picking up that changeup. And when he throws a breaking ball, they all think it's outside because he steps across his body and then it snaps back
Right.
to the heart of the plate. So it's not always about high velocity. It's really about effectiveness and what the hitter sees from that effective standpoint.
And I mean, certainly you want to have your command. You want to hit your spots in the strike zone. Totally understand that. But what it sounds like to me, what you're saying, Cowboy, is he can sometimes not necessarily have to hit the target, but if the batter has no idea where the ball is or the break and can't pick up the spin of the ball, they're going to be confused no matter where the pitch winds up going.
Yeah, I think there are some pitchers, and I would put Andrew in this class, that they can make mistakes within the strike zone and still get batters out because the hitter has a tough time picking the pitch up. There are other pitchers where you see the entire arm arc, you see the release point, you pick up the ball really well. Now, they may throw the ball 100 miles an hour, but if you see it and you're able to track it consecutively over and over again, you're going to wear them out because you can see everything that comes out of their hand. I just don't think that's the case with Andrew. I think the hitters have a tough time picking up the ball.
Including Monday night, what you've seen from Nick Lodolo so far this year. What do you like? What can be improved?
Well, I think number one for Nick, he's most effective when he is using the inside part of the plate. In the ball game that he pitched last night, he came out in the first inning. He was using the inside part of the plate, 3 up, 3 down, struck out 2 of the 3 batters. We fast forward that into the second inning. He did not throw a pitch on the inside part of the plate until the eighth batter in that inning. He had already given up 2 runs. And that was after pitching coach Derek Johnson had come to the mound. And immediately upon Johnson's departure, they went back to throwing the ball on the inside part of the plate. And then the rest of the ball game was pretty effective. But the issue for me is whether that is Jose Trevino or whether that's Nick Lodolo. You have to be able to figure that out when you've got a young team or you have a veteran team that is game planned to hit the ball the other way. You have to figure that out quickly. You can't just pitch the same way every single time to every single team. It doesn't work.
Yeah, and I have, many people have told me around the ball club that Nick Lodolo has the best stuff on that staff. When he is on, his stuff is flat out electric. Because I asked someone in the organization to compare the stuff between Rhett Lauder and Nick Lodolo, and he said, and this was in spring training out in Goodyear, and he said, didn't hesitate. He said, when they're on, Nick Lodolo, without question. And I guess it surprised me to a degree because Rhett Lauder's got such a great repertoire at such a young age, and he's so mature. But I think people underappreciate what Nick Lodolo can bring to the table when he's on. He's got ace stuff, right, Cowboy?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of why you could hear my bit of frustration in my comment with Nick and Jose Trevino early. Because when you're watching a pitcher that you have great expectations for, and they don't make mid-game adjustments or mid batter adjustments, it's a little bit frustrating because you can see what they can be. They can't really see it at this point, but you can see because you've been around the game a long time. You can see where they can get to, and I believe that the Reds have a phenomenal opportunity over the next few years to have 2 of the best pitchers in baseball in Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo. I really believe that. And their stuff is good enough to where you could line them up with any other name that you described in the game of baseball and maybe some that are coming. And, everybody talks about this Dodger staff and some of these other teams around baseball. Look, there's no reason that Nick Lodolo can't be Tariq Skubal. There's no reason you can't tell me that this guy is better than him as far just measuring on stuff, but it comes down to pitch execution, and it comes down to recognizing what hitters are trying to do to beat you.
I also think that Terry Francona making the decision to keep Derek Johnson around, underrated decision. Look, I love Derek Johnson both as a personality, a guy to talk baseball with. He was on this podcast back in January, and even then he was like, I cannot wait for a couple of weeks from now to head down to Goodyear and start to really gear up what I'm doing. But even in mid-January, DJ was working on all of his preparations plans for each individual picture. He never stops working. I just think the fact that they kept DJ around in that clubhouse, I think that helps a lot of the pitchers who have been coming up through the organization.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think that there's not one pitcher in that locker room that has been around DJ that doesn't understand that he lives this life and this game for you and not for you as a staff. He lives this life for you as an individual because he wants to figure out the absolute every single way that he can to make you the greatest pitcher that you can be. And when you've got a pitching coach like that, boy, you know that no matter where you are or what you're doing, you've got somebody that you can count on, and he's in your corner, whether you're up or down. And I think that's Derek Johnson. And I mean, that's a great feeling. I know for me as a former pitcher, boy, wouldn't I love to step back in time and have this guy be on my sideline just for a few days, much less a few years. I mean, it's a big deal to have somebody care that much about you as a person and as an athlete and try to put those two together to help you be great and make the most money you can in this game.
Maybe I'm reading into this too much. Maybe I'm not. One of, I think, Nick Kroll's strengths in terms of building the whole team, not just the players, but the coaching staff and in the scouting department and all of it. But with the coaching staff, I really do think Nick Kroll has tried to bring coaches in who can who can really relate with the players. And that's where certainly Derek Johnson falls into that category. Chris Valeka falls into that category. And by the way, here's an aside. I think the way Chris Valeka handled everything during those 3 straight 1-0 losses told me all I needed to know about him. There's no panic. I'm not going to change the overall end goal, the long-term approach, just based on struggles, historic struggles, all they may be. But he didn't change anything. No panic. Another coach I want to bring up. I don't know if fans are as in tune with him, as aware of him. I certainly am from my days in Boston. Mike Napoli. When I see Mike Napoli, Cowboy, there's no messing around. I think there's an accountability out there. We see him on the field working, of course, with Spencer Steer. He worked a lot with Christian Encarnacion Strand before he got injured. Tell us a little bit about your impressions of Mike Napoli and his impact, his effect around the clubhouse.
Well, I think that when you talk about Nap, he's that guy that's the bigger guy. He's an imposing presence. You see him walking around, you think,
very much,
is that a player or coach? I mean, let's be honest, is that a player or coach? So that in itself gives you some kind of idea of what kind of message that he sends around the players, because he can kind of fit in both rooms. He can fit in the hitter's room, he could fit in the pitcher's room, and he could fit in the coach's room. And that in itself allows you to kind of go around with the players and have that open communication. The one thing that you have to have from anybody that's not putting the uniform on and going out onto the field is trust. And if you've got any coach, any manager, whether they're a pitching coach, hitting coach, whether they're a nutritionist, whatever they are, you have to be able to trust them. Because if you don't, then there's a disconnect. And I think that's the one thing that Nick has done with all of these guys, no matter who he's brought in, is he brings them in believing that there's going to be a trust there, and that way they're going to be able to coach, and they're going to be able to help that player formulate an opinion about how he can be as a player. When the trust is gone, then that coach has to be gone, because what happens is it infiltrates everything else. It's almost like a disease. You got to cut it out.
Absolutely. And another guy that certainly falls into that category and also plays, I think, a key role on this ball club is Freddie Benavides. I think the way he instructs and works with the infielders, we see him all the time hitting ground balls before BP. And what I observed in Goodyear, Cowboy, was him always talking, always with the energy in a lot of the drills, before PFP and whatnot. What do you think of Freddie Benavides, and does he fall into that same category of trust with not only the players, but with Tito?
Yeah, I think that he definitely falls into that category. I believe wholeheartedly that the players trust him. And you go back to Mike Napoli, and I would throw Freddie and really all of these guys into the same category. The ones that I know the best is that in their mindset as coaches, and Freddie is this way, Nap is this way, the one thing that they have in their forefront is they're trying to make you better as a player. They're trying to help you kind of get through those bonds that you have that you put on yourself, because the game is hard. So there is some negativity that creeps in, and when you're asked to do a certain thing, maybe a coach wants you to catch the ball a different way, or maybe line your feet up a certain way when you're hitting, hold your hands in a different spot. If you don't totally trust this guy, why would you do it? Why would you even it would be in one ear and out the other, because you're not going to do it. So in order to have that trust, there's got to be some communication. I mean, that's built over a period of time. It doesn't just show up on the first day. And I think when you have coaches that show you as a human being, not as a baseball player, as a human being, that they genuinely care about you, you will begin to trust them. And when you trust them, then you will begin to get better as a player. And I think we're seeing that on this Reds club, and it's coming pretty quickly.
Speaking with the Cowboy, Jeff Brantley of the Reds radio and TV networks, what have you liked so far about Graham Ashcraft and the way he's handled his adjustment to the bullpen?
Well, I think that he has begun to learn that instant adrenaline can be quite addictive. When the phone
Yes.
rings and that heart rate shoots up through your neck, that's a pretty good feeling. And you get it on a daily basis when you're in the bullpen, and you only get it once every 5 days when you're starting. So there is a general feeling of coming to the ballpark like you were in the lineup every day when you're in the bullpen, because you really don't know if you're going to pitch or not, depending on the situation in the game. Now, I think the hardest part to learn as a young, strong arm out of the bullpen, and Ashcraft would check all the boxes. He could probably do anything that you ask him to do, from pitching in the long roll to closing a ball game and it's 2-1 and the bases loaded. He could probably do all of those things. But the problem that you have with a young pitcher, and I know this because I did it myself, is you want to pitch every day. Every time there's a situation with the bases loaded, every time it's crucial in the ball game, you don't care if it's in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, whatever it is. I want to pitch. Got to get in the game. And as a manager, that's what you want. You want him to feel that way, because you know when he enters the ball game, he's ready. But you also, as a manager and a pitching coach, you have to guard against that when they're young, because you'll wear him out. He'll be done by the end of May.
So, but as you're saying that, Cowboy, I'm thinking to myself, he was good as a starter and had his moments as a starter, but that personality doesn't fit throwing every 5 days at all, obviously. But when you see him throw, I think he's done a pretty good job managing himself over the first, well, what is it? He's been in 8 games. He has yet to allow an earned run in those 8 appearances this year. The only 4 runs he allowed were all unearned in that wild and wacky game on Thursday against Seattle when the Reds lost 11-7. He still came in and he pitched well. He made an error. He did do that, but his adrenaline, he always seems ready to go 110%. And I guess for an 8th inning guy, that's kind of what you want, right?
Right. Anybody that's pitching from the 7th inning on has got to enter the ball game, and no matter who's standing at the plate, you have to believe you're better than that guy, and you're just going to make the pitch and you're going to get him out. And that really starts with strike one. And any one of those guys that are in that spot, I don't care what team they play on, whether it's the Reds or anybody else, the key to pitching late in the ball game is being able to get ahead in the count. And that's not always easy when you have a guy standing in there like Aaron Judge or Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani, somebody can hit the ball out of the ballpark and tie the ball game or win the ball game with one swing of the bat. But you have to also understand in your mind that this guy hasn't seen you today. He hasn't seen one pitch from you, and you may not have faced him in a year. So throw that baby over the plate the first pitch, then you can play around. Because more than likely what he's going to do is he wants to judge the speed of the ball, or maybe check out the release point from you on the first pitch of this at bat, and then he's going to settle in. So why not start the at bat 0-1 and get a free strike?
Okay, we're going to continue the pitching coach lesson from the Cowboy, Jeff Brantley. What do you see from Alexis Diaz? Because I'll tell you what I see, and this is a layperson talking. I was a catcher in high school, Cowboy. That's my extent of understanding a pitcher to catcher, and that is that his release point changes so much. I just don't see the same release point time after time after time. And a big part, and you know this, it's repeating the release point, and it's repeating where you want the ball coming out, and all of it, your mechanics, your delivery, pitch after pitch after pitch. And that's where I see Alexis Diaz struggling a lot.
Yeah, it reminds me of the same scenario that Rob Dibble had, because once Rob hurt his shoulder, his release points started to get all over the place. And the part of each of their games that made them great at points and times in their career was because the hitter, they threw from all different release points. The hitter couldn't tell where they were throwing from, couldn't pick the ball up at all. And it's a short period of time. And by the time the hitter actually realized, oh, he's throwing from there, it's strike three and you're back to the dugout. But once you get to a point where you can't throw the ball over the plate, or you're throwing the ball in the center of the plate every time, and hitters have seen you and you've been around a little bit, that getting behind in the count is a problem. And I think there are so many fronts for Alexis right now. I mean, when you're used to pitching in the ninth inning, that is adrenaline that you cannot create in any other spot in any place in the ball game. Matter of fact, you can't create it on earth, because it is so electrifying and the buildup is so great, and the anticipation, the nervousness, all of those things come together and they fuel you like nothing else. I mean, it's like pitching on jet fuel. But when you step out of that ninth inning and you're pitching in the fifth or the sixth, not there. And you can't make it there. You're trying, because I've done this. You're trying everything you can to get yourself motivated, get yourself jacked up, and it doesn't come naturally. And so you're trying to force that. And by forcing it, you're doing things that are off the cuff from a mechanical standpoint, because if you're not consistent mechanically with your legs and your body and your balance, your hand's never going to be in the same place when you release the baseball. And that's where he's at. It's not just a physical issue for him at this point. It's a mental issue, because I'm telling you, every time that he warms up in the bullpen, he's got to be thinking to himself, why am I not pitching in the ninth?
Right. And we'll finish it up on this. Emilio Pagan. Can you see Emilio Pagan staying in that role for the foreseeable future with Tito?
I think the thing for Emilio is, in order to pitch in that role, you have to be pristine with your fastball location. And that means you've got to be on the edges or at the top of the zone. And if you're throwing a strike just to throw a strike, that doesn't work in that spot in the ninth inning, because guys are not coming to the plate just to get a single. They're trying to hit the ball into the upper deck. And if you miss over the middle of the plate, you're in trouble. So you have to be more pristine with your location. It's not necessarily about velocity and all of the movement, all those things. You just have to be better with your location, and you have to eliminate the mistakes.
All right. He is Jeff Brantley, does a great job covering the Cincinnati Reds on the Reds Radio Network, along with Tommy Thrall. And when he's on TV, he does a fabulous job with the one and only John Sadak. Cowboy, you're all over the map, and I appreciate it, but not your mechanics. Your mechanics are flawless, and your release point is great every single time. By the way, I learned something new. You can have different release points if you have an idea of where the ball is going to wind up. But if you don't know where the ball is going to wind up, you can't just have random release points. Nope. Yes. See, I learned something new. That's why we have Cowboy on the Code Reds podcast. Cowboy, thanks so much. I appreciate your time very much. And go get him in the rest of the series in Miami. And you are traveling to the Rock Pile, right? Out in Colorado?
Oh, yeah.
You like that place, by the way? Do you like pictures? Can either hate it or love it.
I liked it better when you could see the mountains and they didn't have the buildings back behind center field. I never liked pitching there. I can honestly say that. That was a really tough place to pitch, because you could make a great pitch and the ball would just keep flying.
All right. He's Jeff Brantley. My name is Mike Petralia Trags. Want to thank everybody for downloading this episode of the Code Reds podcast on the CLNS Media Network.